Well, some 150 years ago, it was the American Civil War. I'm Todd Wilson. Hello and welcome to another edition of Todd Wilson's Georgia Journal, as we're making a return visit to Old Clinton War Days, just south of Gray in Jones County, Georgia. As we're back at the annual event, and we're going to be taking in the battle once again, getting to know a little bit more about the artillery's role in the course of battle during the American Civil War, getting to know some of the reenactors, and a whole lot more, maybe even get us something tasty to eat as well right off the fire. That's all coming up on Todd Wilson's Georgia Journal as we're journeying back through history and a visit to the American Civil War and Old Clinton War Days. We return to bring you more of Old Clinton War Days. This year marks the 31st incarnation of the festival, which happens the first weekend in May. The small community of Clinton draws hundreds of visitors during War Days. Vendors of all types line the streets. You can choose from plenty of books, both fiction and nonfiction. Food. Original artwork. And for veterans of other conflicts, support and information. The event is a living history which draws more than just reenactors of Union and Confederate forces. Plenty of women and children also dress in period clothing. In fact, we took in a tea party at this year's event. And toured the area to check out the various encampments. Sights and sounds of 150 years ago abound, including a blacksmith who pounded out tools of the period. Music, too, was at the 31st Annual War Days. The fife and drums played for all to hear. Directing all this variety of action is J.C. Nobles, who coordinates the event for the Clinton Historical Society. 31 years now?
This was our 31st, yes, 31st year.
All right, we're with J.C. Nobles, and you coordinate this entire event, but also the pitched battle we see. Talk about that was Sunshine Church, correct?
Correct. Well, I make a spirited attempt to coordinate it, Todd. It's like any real war, once the first round goes off, everybody forgets, what's going on. The plan goes out the window, but we endeavored to persevere. We make a depiction of the Battle of Sunshine Church, which happened here in Jones County, July of 1864. A force of federal cavalry under General George Stoneman came through Jones County. His intention was to capture Macon and to free the federal prisoners of war there, steal a train, and go toward Andersonville to free those federal prisoners of war, arm them, and turn them loose on the countryside.
Well, those poor guys down at Sumter down there probably wouldn't have been much of a fighting force.
Well, not really. Most of the men that was at Camp Sumter, when they were captured, they were already wounded or sick. That was one reason why the death rate was so high, because those men were in bad shape. A lot of them had a long train ride or a long march, and like I said, they were wounded and sick before. And the conditions in a POW camp are never good for anyone, inside or out.
Absolutely, absolutely. The show we did on Andersonville reflects that, and regardless of whatever period of war and whatever side, the Confederate prisoners who were taken north fared almost as bad as the Union prisoners did at Camp Sumter.
Well, actually, there were more Confederate prisoners of war that died in federal prison camps than there were federal prisoners of war that died in Confederate war camps.
Now, you talked about the pitch battle of Sunshine Church happening in July, and we're here in May. The temperature today was awful close to being July-like.
Oh yes, it was extremely hot. There had been a severe thunderstorm a few days before Stoneman came through, which washed out some of the bridges over Walnut Creek. That's one reason why Stoneman couldn't get into Macon, because the bridges was washed out. But the temperatures were well over 100 degrees, and the humidity was probably typical July, 98 something. Those men had been in the saddle, keep in mind, for over 4 days. They were short on rations. They didn't know exactly where they were. General Stoneman was suffering from saddle sores, if you will. So he was just in a hurry to try to get back to Sherman's lines around Atlanta. So when he made his attempt at Macon, he was repulsed by the militia. They came back the same way they had come in, which was a bad mistake, because by then the countryside they were up in arms. And everybody that could tote a rifle or a pistol or a pitchfork, they were chasing these men. Because when they first came through, I mean, they were robbing, burning, stealing, I mean, just terrorizing the countryside. So the people were up in arms, and as the militia marched out of Macon, the Confederate cavalry that was following Stoneman from the north, they caught them in kind of like a V-shaped pincer movement near Sunshine Church. They fought that pitch battle all day on that hot Sunday afternoon until Stoneman finally capitulated and surrendered most of his force.
Well, it's an interesting lesson in history as people gathered here to watch this. And it's a whole different lesson when you can actually see it in front of you happening instead of maybe just glossing over it in a history book.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. What we try to do here in a living history program, Todd, is to not say what was right or wrong. We just try to show what happened and how it happened. We make it as real as we can without anyone getting hurt. And other than the true blood and destruction, we do a pretty good job here.
Absolutely. The smoke-filled air, which made it difficult a lot of times on the battlefield for both sides.
Oh yeah, you couldn't see. There was no radio communications. You didn't have any air cover. Any of the modern things that you see on CNN and this type of stuff in the tragic wars that we've been involved in for the last 10 years. This was more of an individual unit against unit fight, and in some cases a man against a man, where you couldn't see your target. You were just basically firing blindly toward the biggest amount of smoke.
Well, it's an amazing thing to witness as we're going to bring that to you. The Battle of Sunshine Church as recreated here during old Clinton War days. And then on the second day, you recreate the Battle of Griswoldville.
That's true. The Battle of Griswoldville was fought in Jones, Twiggs County, November of 1864. It was part of Sherman's March to the Sea. The only organized military force in Middle Georgia in 1864 November was the Home Guard, the militia, the convalescents out of the hospitals that were in Macon and Forsyth and the surrounding area. So these men were gathered up, and they had orders to march to Augusta to try to protect the powder factory there. The general commanding these Confederate forces ran into a portion of Sherman's right wing near the destroyed town of Griswoldville, and he decided, instead of trying to march around them, that he would punch his way through.
And 7 times up and down that hill, and they, unfortunately for the militia forces, the Federals had repeating rifles, and it didn't fare so well for the boys in gray that day.
Oh no, it was a very sad day. The militiamen, they were brave, but they weren't trained troops. They did not have the modern weaponry. They were men that were armed with their grandfather's flintlocks. They was cast off English muskets and whatever they could gather up. They bravely did their job, but you can't send old men and young boys against some of the best infantry in the world armed with repeating rifles that's dug in on top of a hill. It's not going to be a pretty picture.
Well, that's something they do every year. And what keeps you coming back every year?
Well, those boys in gray that's laying in them cemeteries. These men were not fighting for power. They were not fighting for glory or monetary gain or conquest. They didn't want to overthrow a government. They were fighting because this was their land and they were being invaded by a foreign army, and they were just trying to defend their homes. So we need to think that to honor that memory, that a man will lay down his life with his brothers to defend his home against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That says a lot. And nobody pays us to do this. We do it to honor the memory of our ancestors who stood up for what they thought was right.
All right. Thank you, JC. Always a pleasure to be back with you here at Old Clinton War Days.
Thank you, Todd. Good to have you around, brother.
Now, unlike Gettysburg, Shiloh, or Vicksburg, the reenactors present historic representations of two battles which were fought locally, the Battle of Sunshine Church and Griswoldville, which both occurred in 1864. Todd Wilson's Georgia Journal rolling on from Old Clinton War Days. We hope you're enjoying this bit of living history. It's the last campfire and the last muster before battle. We'll take you into the heat of battle after the break. From Todd Wilson's Georgia Journal, you stay tuned. Welcome back to Todd Wilson's Georgia Journal and our visit to the 31st Old Clinton War Days. Well, the spectators filled the bleachers as lines of men dressed in blue and gray filed into place. The reenactors portray soldiers from both sides and fill the field. Their uniforms are authentic, as are the weapons, from pistols and rifles to bayonets and cannons. They march into position and present the Battle of Sunshine Church, much the way it happened 148 years ago. Confederate battle lines, as you see, are advancing down the hill to engage the enemy as we are in the midst of a skirmish right here, in the midst of a reenactment at Old Clinton War Days. You can see it's very smoky. The flags were designated so that the artillery behind us could identify their fellow troops. Same as on the other side, the North didn't want to attack and hit their own personnel, so that's why each company had their own banner, their own battle flag, to signify that, hey, we're friendly, don't shoot us. Unfortunately, as the cause was early in the war, oftentimes there would be cases of friendly fire on both sides that would claim many lives. But here, the ammo isn't real, the gunpowder is, and the smell of war and the sounds of war are real. But it's bringing history to life. I'll show you exactly how it was 150 years ago.
unaware, boys. I can get one DVD and burn the whole company to death.
The Battle of Sunshine Church was a Confederate victory in Jones County, about 10 miles north of Gray, near what's now known as the community of Round Oak. About 500 Union troops and General George Stoneman were captured in the battle. The victorious Confederate troops were led by General Alfred Iverson, Jr. Now, what Stoneman had envisioned as a chance to capture Macon, free Union prisoners there, and then eventually at Andersonville and for personal glory, wound up being one of the few Confederate victories during Sherman's march to the sea. When Todd Wilson's Georgia Journal returns, we'll get the full story about life as a member of an artillery unit. Stay with us.